Hey guys, it's Eric here at Farpoint Restorations and Repairs. Today, I'm going to use the old King Bolin S6 Elite to diagnose a issue with this car. Car stalled, smells like it's running rich, burning gas. You can smell it when you're around the car. So we're going to hook this up, take a look, see if it's got any codes, take a look at some live data, and hopefully diagnose it. Let's do it. All right, here we are in the car. We're going to go in and do diagnostics. So check engine light's on, but this car has had the check engine light on quite a bit for evap codes. Don't care about those. All right, so let's go ahead and do an auto search North America. See if we can find this car. And we got ourselves a Tundra. So we're gonna say okay. All right, I can do a full system scan, but in this case, I know which system I've got a problem with, and that is my engine. So we'll go directly into that. Okay, we'll read some codes and let's see. So like I said, evap codes is what it's been setting. However, this is a different symptom set. There we go. So our evap codes are still there, but now we've got a new one, a pending code for system 2 rich fuel trim. And let's get a report on that. Right, we'll take that just so we have a save there. All right, and let's get out of here and take a look and see if we had any freeze frame for that code. Hopefully. Okay, no freeze frame set since it's still pending. All right, well, we'll have to take a look at some live data and let's see if we can diagnose this car live on video. All right, let's see here. Things I want to look at. We'll see if my coolant temp might be the problem. We can look at misfires just to see if we got a random misfire, something that's misfiring but not enough to count, although this got relatively new plugs, and so I'm hoping that's not the case anyway. We already know we got an evap issue. Let's take a look at the fuel pump and the relay. We can look at ejector duration. I want to look at long-term fuel trim. Definitely want to look at the air mass meter, the MAF sensor. And then let's take a look at bank 1 sensor 2 for fuel trim. We don't care about the heater. We'll take a look at short term as well. That ought to be it. Okay, so we're gonna get in there and let's go ahead after she registers all this. Okay, and let's start the car. All right, so no misfires, not even on startup. That's a good sign. Injector duration, 3.3 milliseconds. Bank 1 long-term fuel trim does seem to be staying a little higher, and I can feel a bit of a rumble. Air mass meter seems high too. Yeah, definitely got a bit of a rumble. Short-term fuel trim, she's trying to lean it out. That air mass meter though, that looks way high. And you can save a sample of that if I want to record that. We're got idle here. I'll go ahead and record these and I can look it up on the internet and see if my memory is correct, but that should be, I think, down around 4 something at idle. Injector duration also seems a bit high, but not terribly. Fuel pump's on, fuel pump's commanded. No fuel pressure reading on this particular car. No misfires. Coolant temp seems normal. Short-term fuel trim, again, bank 1 right now seems to be checking out. But our long-term, and both those are really high. I think I have a problem with an air mass meter, but let me go ahead and we're gonna go inside. We're gonna reference that information and I'll show you how we go about verifying an issue before we start. Well, we're not gonna swap parts, but I do have some cleaner. We can try to clean the air mass meter, see if those numbers change at all. And that would be a good indication of what we might have going on. Let's do that. Okay, so I'm here on Direct Hit Identifix, which if your shop doesn't have that, you're really hurting yourself here. entered in the rich code, P0172, bank 1 rich. And you can see here our fault codes. As far as what it's finding, 11 people saying you got a timing belt issue. I find that hard to believe. Intake manifold possible, although you think you'd have some random misfires in there if you had that. And then mass airflow sensor. And if we scroll down, actual fixes, 2 for the air mass meter, some ECM wiring issue, which is possible with rodents. And over here we have our information. So it's time to now start looking at the vehicle itself and seeing if we see anything that pops out. I'll take a quick look at the wiring, but I think I'm gonna pull the air box off, take a look if something maybe decided to move in to my air box, and then we'll clean the air mass meter and recheck those readings. Let's do it. All right, so first visual inspection, we're looking to see any kind of wiring might be ugly on this. I don't see anything right off the top of my head that looks goofy. That doesn't mean much. Sometimes these things are buried quite deeply in there. And of course, if we want to check our intake manifold, that's just a matter of getting some carb cleaner or some brake fluid and spraying it around the manifold to see if we get more of a miss, less of a miss. Sometimes the RPM will jump. It really depends on the situation. But I'm not seeing any signs of recent, anyway, issues with rodents in here. So I think it's time to pull this off and take a look at it. Now I know the filter on this is relatively recent, but that doesn't mean something hadn't decided to make a home out of it. Well, I can smell raw gas. I caught a whiff of it, so it's definitely running rich. And I don't see any indication that there's monsters living in here. So the next thing I'm gonna do, I'll go ahead and unplug my air mass meter. Just need a Phillips head. I'm gonna go ahead, unscrew that. We'll pull the meter out, we'll clean it. All right, let's go ahead, we'll pull that off. Yeah, I can smell that it's running rich. In fact, I smell just a little bit of fuel, which is a little disturbing, a little not cool. So again, I'll double check the fuel lines and such, but it could be we have a stuck injector, although that should give us a misfire code. And sometimes a bug or something will get caught up in here and it'll be quite visible. And I'm not seeing anything in particular. It does look pretty well dirty though. So it could be the heater element has failed. I've got some cleaner, some air mass meter cleaner. Go ahead and spray that out. This stuff is no miracle cure by any means, but sometimes it can at least give us an idea if our readings are so far off that, you know, if we can get them to change a bit, that'll let us know that that's probably the culprit. I can't say that I can recall how many times cleaning an air mass meter actually fixed the problem permanently, but it certainly usually gives you an indication whether or not more diagnostics need to be done. I'm just cleaning off any leftovers. All right, so let's go ahead and reinstall that now. And I'm kind of curious, this will probably change something for the better. Question is, will it change it drastically enough that we catch it with our scan tool? And we can put our air filter in. Definitely don't want to start that thing up without that in there. That would make a god-awful problem. Sucking up all the little leaves and stuff that made it through the intake. That could cause all kinds of misery. Our connector back in, it's worth taking a look at that for any kind of corrosion, anything like that. This one is nice and clean. All right, let's go back in and see if those readings changed at all. All right, let's take a look at this thing and see what we can find here. Coolant temperature continuing to rise, no misfires. Injector still the same, long term. Now bank 2 is actually higher, so it's starting to come down a little bit. The air mass meter, still hanging high if you ask me. That should down to be about 6. Everything else though seems about the same as well. So the bad news there is that you can't really rule out the air mass meter yet because it could be that cleaning it doesn't help. It's just broken or out of adjustment. However, I do want to go back and grab some some carb cleaner or some brake cleaner and see if I can get the idle to hop up. I am still getting a very, I don't know, obviously it's not registering as a miss, but something doesn't feel quite right with it. It still feels like it's running rich. Let's go check that out too. All right, so since it's setting a bank 1 code, That would be the passenger side on this particular truck. So I'm going to spray around the upper and lower intake. And see if anything changes. Nothing. Okay, let's try the other side just to be sure. She is an old truck. Ooh. Now, some of the variation you're hearing is actually caused by the AC coming on and off. That's that up and down you're hearing occasionally, but now I don't see any issues there either. I'm gonna have to say, based on just the readings that I'm getting as far as that air mass meter goes, that's where I'm gonna start my journey with. So I'll order an air mass meter and we will read these codes again. Let's do it. All right, well, it's a couple days later. I've got my new air mass meter or MAF sensor, and we're going to go ahead and replace that now, and then we're going to check because those grams per second just didn't check out. This is a simple job to replace, obviously, on this car. Unplug the plug, slide it back, and thankfully it's just two Phillips screws here that hold this in. And that's it. We're ready to check with the scan tool to make sure that the car is fixed. Let's do it. All right, so now you can see coolant temperature is about up to operating temp, no misfires. Injector duration is back to normal. Fuel trim, which was maxed out at negative 23, 24, 25%, now right on target. Grams per second now sitting right down there and coming down still because you know, the car is still reacting to its learned values from having a bad sensor, but 4.8, that's a whole lot better than 8, 9, 10. O2 sensors both cycling nicely. Short-term fuel trim right where we want it, cycling back and forth right around 0. So that is how you actually diagnose and repair a vehicle, my friends. You find a thing that is not working properly, you compare that number to a good number if you don't know it off the top of your head, and you fix your truck. That's how easy it is. I use this King Bolin K6, or I'll definitely leave a link. I think it's S6 Pro. Let me see here. Yeah, S6 Elite, and I'll leave a link to where you can get that. But that's it, my friends. If you have any questions on how to diagnose a vehicle, yeah, go ahead and leave me a message here, and I'll do my best to help you out. You got to have a scan tool. You're going to try to fix a car, check engine light, going to get a code reader is not going to cut it. You got to have some way of actually monitoring these things to know what's going on. Till next time, my friends, take care.